Hey everyone, thanks for joining Ghosts of Bacon tonight. I'm your host Jake Roberts, and I have a special treat riding shotgun with me this evening. My good friend John Edwards, and thanks for joining me, man. This is a big show, and I really appreciate the help, and thanks for coming on. All right, so oh wait, you're muted. Oh, you chose to mute. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, we good. We're good. I hear you.
We're good. Thanks for having me on, Jake. Good times.
Thanks for coming. I think, something like this, when I reached out to you and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to need a hand. Are you available? I'm glad you stepped up and just said, hey, I got your back. So
no problem.
Looking at all of the usual suspects and a lot of new faces and a lot of new names here in the chat this evening. Our good friend Tom Burns is there. There's Jan Alverson Anderson, Mary Molsky. Oh gosh, Carol, good to see you. Hey, there's our good friend Court.
Hey, Court.
Thanks, Mary. So Tom, thanks so much for joining us. And as you can see, it's like my hands are in the air and all of your chats are coming up on screen. John is helping me out with all of our chats this evening and the questions that you're going to have throughout this evening's presentation. I got to know something though, Paula. How did you do that cool trick? I wasn't even live yet, and you were chatting with me here on StreamYard. I'm still trying to figure out how you did that. That was pretty cool. Yeah, like,
oh. I don't know.
Hey, there's my friend William Russell. All right. Looking at all of the information that we're going to be looking at tonight, I decided that originally I'd posted on the Ghosts of Bacon group that I was going to do a real big deep dive into one of the Oak Island treasure maps. And it generated a lot of interest, a lot of private messages and those kinds of, and then I realized this topic is so huge. It's so big that what we really needed to do was I needed to, chop it up in bite-sized morsels. And John, you have, been really pivotal to me in that sense of saying, Jake, dial it back. Don't give too much all at once. And, it's such great advice. And with this particular presentation, oh, hey, Dave, good to see you, man. What I really want to get into just tonight is the groundwork for that actual map. And so that's what we're going to get into tonight. What I did for tonight's presentation, my little dog and pony show that I put together for everyone, is I pulled slides from the original presentation that I created last summer for the Oak Island team for the War Room presentation. And we all know after watching season 9 that everything went sideways, where there were certain areas where they were not going to be able to look. So for whatever reason, that ended up, getting sidelined. But what I'm going to do tonight is share all of this with you this evening. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my tab. And John, and just so everyone knows, what John's going to be doing for us this evening is basically, as you have questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. John will throw them up on the screen and interrupt me and say, hey, listen, we have a question here. And we'll be able to do all of this in real time.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is, he's going to all of a sudden say, hey, Jake, would you explain that a little bit more? Because, we have a series of questions, or even John has a question. And just basically keep me on track. The other thing, gang, if you are so inclined, if you are on a laptop or desktop computer, and you want to go to the ghostsofbacon.com and I've worked this into the presentation as well, but I'm going to say it now. If you go to my website and you go to the resources tab, you will be able to pull up a copy of the map I'm going to be discussing tonight and actually zoom in on it and look at it. You'll be able to look at simple, reverse, and K ciphers. I have resources available there in terms of Bacon cipher systems that I'll be referencing this evening. And you'll be able to actually go and actually look at them and understand what I'm saying, as well as the cipher signature table that I have there. What that is, that's a series of numbers that represent Francis Bacon in simple, reverse, and K ciphers, as well as the others. And so if you look at that, and I'll be referencing those numbers, you can just actually look at those resources in real time and confirm all of the information I'm giving you this evening. So that's really what I was hoping would happen. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining all the way from California. Very cool. Yeah. Thanks, John. Yeah, Tom, it was really sunny and warm here today, too. I was able to get out on the back porch with my wife here earlier this afternoon and have a little beverage, and it was nice.
So Jake, when you say you have, are they the exact values in reverse and simple and K? When you say you have the ciphers, the numbers, you just made reference to a number table. What is that? Can you go into that a little more?
Yeah, sure. What cipher signatures are numbers that represent names. And in this case, Sir Francis Bacon used cipher systems called simple cipher, reverse cipher, and K cipher, that when you add up the values of the letters according to these cipher systems, each cipher assigns a value to a letter of the alphabet in the Elizabethan alphabet. And when you add up the values of his name, each of these cipher systems, you have what's called a signature. Okay. And these numbers are highly significant when we are investigating materials that Sir Francis Bacon created. And so when all of a sudden they appear, for example, if they appear in, I don't know, the King James Bible of 1611, or they appear in Shakespeare's sonnets, which they frequently do, we have him signing off on his work.
So it's based on the Elizabethan alphabet, correct? And
24 letters in the alphabet. There is no J, there is no U. Correct. They used I and V in place of J and U. Yeah.
And so, in a nutshell, I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, I do have a working knowledge of it, so it's more.
You know this, but you're doing a really great job of illustrating this for the audience. Thanks.
Yeah. So Bacon. So the value would be 2, 1, 3 for the first 3 letters of Bacon, correct? And you keep adding,
and then 14 and 13 for O and N.
Yeah, and then you add them all up.
You add them all up, and it's 33.
3. Gotcha.
So the number 33 is highly significant in Baconian symbolism for sure. Yeah, John, gotcha. Great question.
So there are other signature ciphers, aliases that also use the same system, and just through our one example, we'll see the constant repetition of numbers, maybe with different aliases as names as well as names that we are very versed with.
100% yes, but however, when it comes to aliases, there's a completely twist on that. And tonight, for the very first time, I'm going to be actually demonstrating the alias formula.
Really?
Yes, what I call the RC alias formula. I'm going to be talking about it this evening. It plays a prominent role in my next book. And this is where and actually I was able to parse it out based upon my research with Manly Palmer Hall. And he was the one that pointed me in the right direction of where to look and how to parse this out. So that was really pivotal in my Baconian and Rosy Cross research for sure.
Awesome. And this is something everyone's going to be able to use once you divulge the formula.
100%. Yes.
Awesome. Cool.
And and the thing is, it's like, I will reiterate this again in this presentation. And while this might seem like it's a complex formula, for Bacon and his contemporaries, this would be something they would be able to do in their heads. and it's hard for us as moderns to understand that, because it's going to seem very, very complex. But at the end of the day, it was something that was a pretty simple process for
Wow.
them. So,
Cool.
all right. So let me go ahead and so, gang. Here's where it all started. Those of you who are not familiar with my information, um, it started with this plaque. This is the plaque that appears on the funerary monument of William Shakespeare in Holy Trinity Church in Stratford upon Avon. And when I looked at this years ago, I looked at it, I thought, well, I'm pretty sure I know what's going on here. This is a cipher, and it's what's called a transposition cipher. Someday when I get time, I'm going to decrypt it. And then fast forward to friends of mine appearing on the Curse of Oak Island television show, and they were studying this plaque, thinking that it contained clues to Oak Island mystery. And I looked at it and I said, well, I've always thought there was something very specific here. And they basically said, well, you're interested in cryptology. Why don't you take a look? And so I was always thought that, well, when I have time, I will. And then all of a sudden, we were all kind of hiding in our homes for a while, and I had some extra time on my hands, and it kept me sane. So I decrypted it. And so what it actually created was nothing less than a treasure map that leads to Oak Island. And so when I decrypted the plaque, it led to nothing less than Champlain's navigational chart of 1612. And this chart leads directly to Oak Island, Nova Scotia. And that's what I'm going to get into in the following show. Tonight, I'm just going to get into the connection between Francis Bacon and Samuel de Champlain. So one of the things that when I'm talking with people online and talking about my research, when I'm giving presentations and doing lectures here locally, one of the things that people say, well, listen, about your theory. And I stop them right there. And I don't have a theory. What this is a discovery in a sense, because I decrypted a message. And it's important to know that I didn't come up with a theory and then find something that related to it. I found a series of messages in cipher form in this plaque that basically these messages, there are 5 different transpositions, different orders of the characters that you see depicted here on this plaque. These letters can be rearranged in 6 different ways that produce completely different messages. That's how complex this cipher system is. And in those messages, Sir Francis Bacon makes multiple claims. The primary of which that comes through in every single one of these transpositions is that he was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Francis II of France. So that in and of itself, for me, was enough to say, well, who cares about Oak Island? I'm going to focus on this. And John, you and my friend, William Russell and my friend Jason Mercer, you all, through your own methods, have also found that this idea keeps popping up. So it's really important for people to kind of wrap their heads around this idea that this is not a theory, but actually a series of messages. And so when we're looking at ciphertext evidence, this is really, really important because ciphers contain the truth. I've said this in previous episodes of this podcast. And when it comes to, historical documents, whenever someone identifies a true cipher where they use scientific methods to decrypt it, it contains the truth every time. And, Elizabeth and William Friedman. William Friedman is the father of the modern NSA here in the U.S. These two were involved in early cryptanalysis of Shakespeare's first folio, looking for evidence that that Bacon had written Shakespeare. And then later on, all of a sudden, World War I happened, then World War II. Next thing you know, these two are working for the government and decrypting, the enemy's ciphers. And so after World War II, they returned to their original passion, which was Baconian ciphers and William Shakespeare. And there were a whole series of books that were written by then by amateur cryptologists, much like myself. However, they didn't exactly use what we would call scientific methods of cryptanalysis. And Elizabeth and William Friedman debunked every single one of those books. And so Baconian cipher research took a pretty big hit at that point. However, one of the things they said in their book when they were basically debunking all of this work was that if they were able to return to the solid ground of cipher messages, then that were scientifically decrypted, then we're on the framework of truth. I mean, this is coming right from the experts of cryptology. And so as a modern audience, people still have a tough time accepting that. They say that the perception is that, well, if the evidence you have comes in cipher form, it's suspect. Whereas the experts in cryptology say that that's solid foundation for truth. So I think it's important to establish that. But because I am dealing with a modern audience, I know that I have to come up with corroborating evidence and have other people also confirm my findings as well. And so that's what I've been doing here for the last year or so, or 2 years.
And Jake, we know that the ciphers were in use. I mean, Mary Queen of Scots lost her head because they cracked her cipher.
Exactly.
Elizabeth, ciphers were being used between spies and governments. During the Revolutionary War,
Yep.
the 1623 Masonic Constitution of Anderson, all the way up to modern day ciphers. They've been used over and over and over again to
100%.
to code and to be decoded for important information. Now the question is, what is the information? What is the impetus of the information, and what is the relevance? And what is it that they were hiding
100%.
that the redundancy was required to
Mhm.
push the message forward? Now,
100%, John. Yeah.
if you want to make sure that the message goes forward, you just don't code it in one specific methodology. You
Correct.
code it in many different genres and many different mediums and many different works of literature all over the place, because if this source gets destroyed, the message still makes it through in this source.
100%. And that's exactly what happened. And Amy, with your comment that John put up on the screen, you're 100% right. It's not just repetition, it's redundancy, it's repetition. It's the fact that other people can replicate my findings using scientific, methods that have a standard operating procedure that also produce the same messages. Everything I found is 100% repeatable.
I mean, Jason sees it in his work. William
Yes.
Russell sees it in his work. You see it in your court, sees it in his work.
Sees it
I
in
see
his,
it in
yeah.
what I do. And it's the same overarching tones. I mean, Court is a big Arcadia fan. Philip Sidney's Arcadia, and he sees kind of the Oak Island, leaving and the whole, but it's this ongoing theme. And we start looking at the themes, the line of thought. What is it that was so important to members of the club that the rest of us, didn't have privy to that information? And
Exactly.
it has to be something that's important. You're not going to code something just whimsically. It doesn't make any
when
sense.
when you consider that one of the main messages was his royal parentage, that puts into question the succession of 2 royal families
Correct.
in Europe. Two of the most powerful countries in Europe. That's huge. And Amy, I love that you're bringing up confirmation bias, because this is my bread and butter. It's my wheelhouse. I teach critical thinking skills as a teacher, And one of the very first things I get into is confirmation bias and disconfirmation bias, as well as fallacies of logic. These are the basis of critical thinking, and they're also the basis of the scientific method that you just mentioned. And so the idea that, and I love the comment that you mentioned, echo chambers reign supreme. That's one of the biggest problems we have today. People
Mm.
love, you know, just kind of repeating the same things, and then they all just pat each other on the shoulder, saying, "Oh, we're so much smarter than that other bubble over there," and that other bubble's doing the same thing. So this idea of echo chambers is anathema to me in terms of what I do. So
And Jake, that's
thank
why
you for making that.
independent validation is so important. And you and I do that all the time. I see it here, or maybe I'll have the same discovery. I say, "Hey, Jake, what's the significance of this number?" Already knowing it. And then you'll
Yeah.
say, I say, "Okay, I just found this." "Oh, I found that 6 months ago." I'm like, "Seriously?" And you'll say, "Yeah, I found that 6 months ago," because you're way ahead of me in the Bakesonian cipher department. Or I'll see something in code or symbolism, and I'll say, "Hey, this is what I've come up with. What do you think?" And he said, "I found this here." And so
I'm
we're
so
seeing it,
glad.
you know.
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, John, because I want our viewers this evening and everyone else who watches the recording of this video to know that I don't share everything I know on this channel or in these videos. I haven't shared everything I know in my books. Um, and what I do is I make a discovery, I record it in one of my moleskins, according to my little organizational system I have here, and I make a note of it, and then I kind of float a few ideas out there, and hopefully someone else will all of a sudden arrive at the same conclusion. And John, that's what you were referring to earlier, where you shared something you discovered with me, and I said, "Oh, finally." It's one of those things where someone else just found what I had seen 6 months ago, and I said, "Yeah, there it is, man. Good job." you know, so yeah, it's one of those things where um, it's the redundancy, it's repetition, it's other people, basically corroborating a lot of the things that I found,
Mm.
and so I think that's really important.
And what makes that really important, Jake, is you want to make sure that there's that independent validation. Okay,
100%.
it's so very important to have that, because without that, is it that you're infusing what you think is correct with your own biases, and
Right.
we all have, you see things from Bakesonian cipher, I see things from symbolism. That's kind of my niche, but it's also my bias. And so it kind of washes that bias out of there to some extent, because you're seeing it done in a different way, same message,
Yes.
and so you
Yeah,
say,
from a
well,
different
from a different angle. And it's so important that everyone has a niche, everyone's seeing it from a different angle. And if everyone's coming up with the same message, then
it's there.
there
But
has to be something to it.
there has to be something to it, and what I do, John, in my work is, I need a context to even look at something, okay?
Oh, it's all context.
Yeah, there has to be a context. I mean, if there's no reason to consider the number 92, it's just the number 92, right? If all of a sudden it appears in a context that's associated with Sir Francis Bacon or Anthony Bacon, then suddenly, and if it plays a prominent role on, say, the cover of a book, that's when I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, 92. That's reverse cipher for Bacon. That
Hmm.
this is Anthony or Francis, and so it has to have a context to even bother for me to bother to look at it, which is kind of what you and I had discussed when it came to, say, Zena's map. I hadn't
Hmm.
even looked at
Hmm.
it because there's no context for me to even investigate and look at it. So,
And the other thing
oh,
that's interesting, go
yeah.
ahead.
All right. So, what I really want to talk about is I had to use this picture. First of all, it's like it's not that I'm jealous of his hair. It really isn't, gang. Um, it's that if I had hair, I wouldn't do that with it. Anyway, one of the things when I talk about these discoveries of these messages, people are like, "Oh, wait, Jake, hold on. You really expect us to believe that?" And my first answer is, I place no expectations on anyone's belief systems this evening as I roll out some of these discoveries that I haven't talked about. All of this stuff is corroborated, and I have all of the support in my book, The Holy Trinity Decryption. I'm not going to go through letter by letter, and so if you're going to watch this video, either now or live or later on YouTube or on Facebook, and say, well, Jake, you kind of glossed over this. I don't care. It's all in my book. Okay. So I am not here to letter by letter decrypt these messages for you. I'm going to tell you what the messages are. And then I'm going to show you the corroborating evidence that I found to support them. So, and the reason I say this is because these messages are not believable. I didn't believe them when I found them, which in my mind is a form of corroboration, because there's no way I could engage, and thank you, Amy, for bringing it up, confirmation bias. I can't just engage my own biases because I did not expect to find these kinds of messages. They are what they are. And when I looked at them, I thought to myself, this cannot possibly be true. And yet I found the corroborating evidence. So if I had followed my own preferences, if I had instead tried to just confirm my own biases, I would be looking for a completely different outcome than what I'm going to be sharing with you this evening. So all of these messages went directly against our orthodox understanding of history and my own cognitive biases in terms of what I believe to be true. And so this was very, very challenging information for me personally. And it wasn't until I found the evidence that supports it from different sources that I realized that everything I'm going to be showing you this evening is true. So when we take a step back and we look at all of this using some objectivity at what we know for a fact happened in history, all of these things start to make sense. And this is what I've been finding with all of this information, John. This is what you've been finding.
Yep.
And so when we think about it in a logical sense, and we start laying out some timelines in particular.
Jake, you got a question in chat that I threw up there.
Awesome.
I wonder if you could quickly tackle that while we're going through this.
Oh, Zontlo, thank you for coming. Yeah. Do I believe the system for aliases also works for authorship of other books and writings by Bacon? And Zanlo, thank you for that question. It not only works for authorship, it works for, and not just for Bacon, it also works for Anthony Bacon, and also works for Sir Walter Raleigh. So
That's
yes, the answer is yes. Such a great question. It works for William Shakespeare in terms of Bacon, and it works for his other aliases that I outlined in my book, such as Tiberio Tonelli, the famous Renaissance artist, the master artist. And oh yeah, Court's comment. Oh, sorry, John, you take it. Court, I spend more than half of my time doing exactly that. I mean, I wonder, could I possibly have gotten this wrong? And I want to make sure I guard against that. So with these cipher messages, I made sure that I followed a standard operating procedure every time, and I just followed it wherever it led me. So, oh, look at that next question, John.
I have it. I would say yes, in a sense. I guess that's the best way to answer that question. I mean, based on our discussions.
Yeah, based on our discussions, but I'm also going to say that I've been avoiding John D like the plague. And Amy, yeah, you're 100% right. It works for everyone in his crew for sure. But with John D, I've been avoiding working with John D's material for a couple of reasons. I'm not so sure he was a real person, and that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, and I don't want to do that. But I'm very credulous when it comes to John D. I kind of I'm not going to speculate. As soon as I find corroborating evidence to support some of the ideas that where my research has led me, I'll go there. But I would like to kind of reserve my own judgment. Yeah, Mary. I know. I've been avoiding it. I have been, and so I'm confessing it here this evening for all of you. But I'm just going to move on.
And
So,
if he's not, Jake, if he's not a real character, did he had a purpose, or at least his character had a purpose? I mean, character is in like almost like a literary character.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is throw out there, Johnny, and you and I kind of talked about this pre-show, but they were living out the Shakespearean line, "All the world's a stage, and we are merely players."
Yes.
They created roles for themselves. They created characters for themselves, and they played that character in real life, live action role play, only not just LARPing and dressing in Renaissance garb and having fake battles and stuff. No, they were doing the real thing using different names. And that's the very nature of what intelligence operatives do today. So what I'm going to tell people to do, listen, gang, if you are interested in this and you really want to kind of follow along and follow all the dots here, go to theghostsofbacon.com and go to the resources tab. And then you're going to be able to look at the resources that outline simple reverse and K ciphers. They're very easy to follow, very easy to understand. And also there is another document there for the substitution system. The at-bash system is what we call it, between simple and reverse cipher. This is very important when it comes to anagrams. And also the signature table that's there. And you'll be able to actually confirm all of these numbers that I'm going to be talking about this evening. So this is the map that all the cipher clues led to. This is the 1612 Samuel de Champlain map. And it's actually a navigational chart. Sailors would be able to actually use this chart to navigate to all of the places. If you look down here in the legend, they're all labeled. And you would actually be able to use this chart to navigate to every single one of these labeled locations. So there were a series of what are called keys. That's what I call the algorithms that transpose the letters of that plaque that I talked about at the very beginning of the show into a new order. Key 32 contained the following messages, and I'm just giving them to you for free this evening. Bacon said, "I wrote books at sea. See my pictures of shipboats," which I thought was bizarre because I never knew that he was a sailor. And then he said, "The Holy Rex sent me Tadoussac, New World for fur trade," which was kind of odd. Holy Rex. "Rex grant my Don de Deux to search the northwest trade route. That way shut. Identify chance for Mio rule." So he identified his chance for his rule. We know that Sir Francis Bacon was Francis III. He was the rightful heir to the throne of France and the rightful heir to the throne of Scotland and then later England. So I also knew that Don de Deux was the name of the boat used by Samuel de Champlain. That was his ship. And then he said, "I live my dream. I saileth as first mate under the king of the seven seas, F. Drake. I map Cluer Boazio." And then within the name of Boazio was Giovanni Battista Boazio, all encrypted in that area of that name, intertwined with it. And so I realized that Boazio was the one who had created the images of a lot of Drake's adventures and so on. So I then created what was called Key 5 of Key 38. Key 38 what uses the number 38 to rearrange all of those letters on the plaque. And then I used the number 5 to rearrange the letters in that rearrangement. So these letters have been scrambled completely at this point, and they had the same messages.
So you're saying it's an anagram with a specific algorithm to put them in the correct order, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. And then what it does, it's called a transposition cipher, and a transposition cipher
Mm,
traditionally always creates what are called acrostic anagrams. An acrostic anagram is when the letters are all juxtaposed with one another in a shape
mhm,
and create an anagram. And that's what this cipher message did. So there were acrostics within this arrangement. One of them was Rosie Mapmaker, which I'll show you in a second.
mhm.
Then there was another acrostic that said "See hat," and then there was another acrostic that said "See trio trees." Now, with this cipher work, what happens is not every letter is used in the message, and so these letters are left over. And what I realized early on was that if you add them up in simple cipher, reverse cipher, and case cipher, that the totals actually end up being Bacon cipher signatures. And that means that I did it correctly. Also, oftentimes, the letters that are left over can actually be turned into a message in and of itself. For example, A, I, 5 is the letter E, but then you also have the V here and K, Y, B. It's actually using the substitution system of V can equal E in our @bash system. The anagram is key IB111. Now, 111 is the value of Bacon in case cipher. So I thought, well, okay, that's what it means. But no, it also means IB the third, Francis the third. But you'll see that key IB111 associated with all of these messages about Samuel de Champlain is also important when it comes to the alias formula. Now, 72 is the value of Rex Francis Bacon, as well as Francois III in short cipher. And it's King Bacon and King F III in simple cipher. 153, I Sir Francis Bacon, and also I Rex Francis Bacon
Mhm.
in Prince in simple cipher. King Bacon in reverse, as well as Roi Francois and Francois III in fourfold ciphers. 228, you see, has these values. Francis Valois Angoulême, that was the house name of his father in simple cipher. King Francois III in reverse, King F III in K. And so we see the same message being repeated over and over again that goes along with the anagram of the leftover letters, key IB the third. And you see the third referenced in every single one of these values.
So, Jake, do me a favor. Can we go back one slide, please?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna. What's interesting about the previous slide, and you said it's all about context, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the Holy Rex, which to me would be Francis Bacon as Ascendant Master, sent to the New World. Now, if you know anything about that time period, you know New France, New Francais, was the whole Great Lakes region, all that upper, you know, and there was furs coming out of there by the tons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cartier writes about it, other people, Caput writes about it. So
Yes.
that makes perfect sense. So not only are you decoding
Well,
it,
well,
but the question is,
Holy
okay,
Rex is King Louis the 13th.
King Louis the
He was
13th.
holy.
That also makes sense.
He was the Holy Rex because he was a Catholic
Ah,
king.
Catholic thing,
Okay.
but that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
The whole fur trade makes sense. I mean, when you look at what you've decoded and bounce it off what was going on during that time, now you have a context for it. Nothing that you've put up here contradicts, you know, what's going on in the real world. You know, these are
One
actual
hundred
things.
percent, and that's what I said at the very beginning of this was that we have to look at history versus what really happened. Now, history tells us that Don de Deux was the ship of Samuel de Champlain, but here we see Francis Bacon saying that it was given to him.
Mm, exactly.
So
This
that's
makes
the
perfect sense.
conflict. But when we
Mm,
look at it in terms of history, like I said earlier, suddenly it makes sense. It's all very logical, and I'll get into exactly where that comes from. So I
makes
wanted
perfect
to
sense.
show the checking system with the leftover
Okay.
letters, though, because this is really important, gang. This is when all of a sudden I came up with that whole series of messages, and these were the leftover letters that were done, and to
Wow.
have it have this and then all of these names, uh, it, suddenly this is how I knew that the decryption was correct and successful. So in what I call eMasker of TT, this was key
Mm.
38 that I rearranged with the number 5. Here were the series of messages that came from that one. Tiberio Tonelli, that was good, but my best alias was Samuel de Champlain. I am a native party there at St. Tangua Dock. I led Fleet West. Again, all fits in with history. King sent me to oversee work, but I rule my nation. Samuel de Champlain was the governor of New France. And so here we have a message from Francis Bacon saying that he used the alias Samuel de Champlain and he ruled his nation here in the New World. This is just, I can't stress enough how, first of all, this is supposed to be impossible, according to what we know about true history. I know how crazy this sounds, gang, but these are the messages. I'm reporting this discovery. It's not a theory. Then he states, James sent me to stop Captain Walt Raleigh Caribbean campaign. Now, no one knew that Francis Bacon was a sailor. He was a first mate to Francis Drake, according to the previous messages. And so
Mhm.
now all of a sudden his brother, half brother, James says, go get Walt Raleigh and stop him. And he also says, I timed the meridians. F. Drake chose me as the wisest astrologus, or Latin for astronomer. So we know how difficult it was to time meridians back then, longitude. And here he says, I was the best one at it. That alias fed bait to trap ass. This is the message. Ass Wa Louis. I used the grants as I figured he tied to the debt. So he used the alias of Samuel de Champlain
Hmm.
to get Louis the 13th to grant him the boat and all of the lands here in New France. And I say here because I live in St. Lawrence County, New York, in the St. Lawrence Valley, where Samuel de Champlain actually has been. So this is really pretty amazing stuff. Now, for the first time ever, I'm going to reveal the alias or pseudonym formula for the Rosy Cross. I call it the pseudonym checking system. Now, this came from my first clue that this even existed was from Manly Palmer Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And the quote in it says, in all probability, the keys to the Baconian riddle will be found in classical mythology. He who understands the secret of the seven-rayed god will comprehend the method employed by Bacon to accomplish his monumental labor. Aliases were assumed by him in accordance with the attributes and order of the planetary system. So every clue I needed to figure out this formula was actually in this quote. First of all, when he said, in order to accomplish his monumental labor, most of these have to do, when it comes to us, you're going to see a part of this deals with classical mythology. And that classical mythology, most of it is along the lines of the 12 labors of Hercules. And so he used his words purposefully. He knew exactly what this formula was. And so one thing that I knew was that the fourfold cipher system actually has encoded with it and associated with it the planetary bodies of the solar system at the time. And so there are certain values that are very symbolic associated with that. And also, obviously, it's associated with Greek myth and Roman myth. What people don't realize is this points us to Agrippa's magic squares. The seven-rayed god is the solar system. And each of Agrippa's magic squares, each one of them is associated with a different planet in the solar system. And each of these magic squares has a constant, a number associated with it. If you're not familiar with Agrippa's magic squares, what they are is, say there's a 3x3 grid, and it's full of numbers 1 through 9, and no matter how you add them up, it always totals 15. If you total, across, up and down, diagonal, they total 15. That 15 is the constant of the 3x3 magic square. And so this goes all the way up to a 9x9 magic square, which the 3x3 is associated with the planet Saturn, and the 9x9 is associated with the moon, Luna. So each one is associated with a different planetary body. Now, the work of Peter Dawkins, for example, Peter Dawkins is the foremost authority on Sir Francis Bacon and Shakespeare out there. And in his book, The Shakespeare Enigma, he talks about masking. And it was a very common practice back in Bacon's time, the idea of using another person's name who was actually alive in order to write something under their name, which is what Sir Francis Bacon did with the Stratfordian actor named Shakespeare. But the thing is, all of the people who were using masking at the time made sure that the last name was very symbolic and it contained a meaning within it. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to break down for you how this alias formula works. Now, first of all, the last name has to be symbolic. And when it comes to Champlain, champ means field in French. Lane means wool. So it's field of wool. Obviously, John, what animal is that associated with?
The sheep.
Sheep, 100%. Yep. Liane is also eldest boy in French. So he was the eldest Stewart boy in the field, is what he was referring to there. So there's another pun there. But the next step is to calculate the value of the name using fourfold cipher. And any of you who are actually watching it and went to my website and you're looking at the fourfold cipher table, you'll be able to do exactly that. Apollo is actually based upon, come to find out, the Greek word Apollo, which means a sheep fold. So therefore, the name Champlain is referencing the god of Apollo. Now, god Apollo is associated with Sol, or the sun. This is the 6x6 Agrippa's magic square, and its constant is, look at that, 111. Now, if you remember the leftover letters from the previous checking system, I'm a 111. Suddenly, all these messages associated with Champlain also reference this specific Agrippa's magic square. So when we look at this one, here's how it works. We looked at those leftover letters, the key IB 111. It takes on a wholly different meaning. So if we look at Samuel Champlain, the number, when we calculate the value in fourfold cipher, it's 211. If we calculate the difference between 211 and 111, which is Francis Bacon in symbol cipher. If we add in the DE, Samuel de Champlain, which isn't necessary, but I wanted to do this for clarification purposes, just in case somebody says, well, wait a minute, you take out the letters. Well, if we subtract 111 from 239, we have a difference of 128, which is not a clearly known, primary cipher signature of Francis Bacon like 100. However, it is the value of King Francois Valois Angoulême in short cipher. And so what I discovered is that most of the aliases can also be associated with Bacon's hidden heritage.
That's very interesting, Jake. Not only that, but symbolically, Sol Victus, which was the god you're referring to in mithralism, was the resurrection god, the ascendant master god. So it's the same. It's the same thing. He associates himself with the god of resurrection or ascension.
And
with one
when
of
we get
them
into the information about him faking his death too, John, I mean, it just keeps
on
going.
on Easter morning.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Of
mean,
all things. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, of all days. I mean, come on now.
yeah, yeah. And so also it's the value of King F the third in reverse cipher.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So what I
Wow.
had to do, I had to find corroborating evidence. So here's an image from Batista Boazio. This is an illustration of Sir Francis Drake's ship and his Cartagena campaign. And here you have the little shipboat. He says, "See my shipboats." So I decided, I'm like, well, he claims to be Batista Boazio. Let's take a look at his images. And sure enough, here is a shipboat hanging out. And when we zoom in on it, you're going to see something pretty interesting. Um, I want you to look at his characteristic hat. If you remember a lot of the portraits of Sir Francis Bacon, he was always wearing that beaver hat. And also pay attention to the waves at the bow. Many of you can probably even see the number that appears there, right there, even without zooming in. Now, I consider this to be circumstantial evidence, even though he tells us in the ciphertext, look here, and we're seeing images that confirm it. But once we get to the Champlain map, I don't think we can refute what we're seeing here. What number do you see at the bow, John?
Oh, what is that, Jake? 33.
33. Those of you
Wow.
looking at the cipher signature table, 33 is Bacon in simple cipher.
Sure is. Wow. That's amazing.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So let's go to Champlain's book. Gang, I told you this was going to be a deep dive. We're digging in tonight. Champlain was known for drawing highly detailed maps. He was a very talented cartographer. And he masterly executed drawings in a way that made him appear to be a master artist. And when you look at his chartographical map of 1612 that we're going to be looking at tonight, as well as in a couple of weeks, my next episode, you can't dispute that he was a master artist at all. Now, no one knows anything about his childhood. This is something that is very, very familiar to me now when working with an alias of Samuel de Champlain, or of Francis Bacon and Walter Raleigh and the rest. Whenever I start looking up the background of one of their aliases, they say, well, not much was known about their early childhood. And it's like, oh, go figure. That's because they didn't exist. And suddenly these people burst onto the world scene, full-fledged. No one knows where they went to school. No one knows where Champlain really was classically educated. They said, well, he had to be classically educated because of what he did. Yeah, no crap. But where? There are no records of it. And so all of these big question marks are, once again, more corroborating evidence. No authentic portraits ever existed of Samuel de Champlain. This one was painted, I think, in the 17 or 1800s. There is one self-portrait that we will be looking at this evening, and it's actually referenced. It's the one that's referenced by the cipher. So let's take a look at the works of Samuel de Champlain to see if we can find any evidence of Sir Francis Bacon. This is the one known self-portrait of Samuel de Champlain. Here he is at the very center of the image. This is the famous battle with the Iroquois on the shores of Lake Champlain. Now, this is where we're going to dig into it. First of all, there are multiple letters here in the shipboats. Notice I call these shipboats, even though they're canoes, I call them shipboats because there are no paddles nearby. That's a mistake. Mistakes are always clues. And these look more like shipboats than they do canoes, in my humble opinion. And so when I look at these and I see, 4 H's but 5 I's, and then down here we see not all of these are labeled C. Why don't, if these are going to be labeled C, why aren't all of them labeled C? So you know what I do? I start adding values. The letters in simple cipher, when we add all of these up, equal 92 in simple cipher. Everyone, that's Bacon in reverse cipher. 258 reverse cipher, 456 in K. 92, like I said, is Bacon. 258 is Wa Francois Stewart III in reverse cipher. I have no value for 456, but I realized that it's 2 times 228, which are two different values of his name. It's also 225 plus 231. I don't like getting into these tertiary sorts of scenarios, but the fact that it's DEF in simple cipher, for example, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's kind of interesting. If we look at one of the acrostics was C hat. Here's Samuel de Champlain's hat. Look at this plumage. Isn't that fascinating? But here, what number do we see here? 55, just kind of floating above his head.
Yep.
55 is Francis Bacon in short cipher. It was one of his primary cipher signatures he used all the time. What numbers do we see here backwards?
33.
33. There it is. What letter do we see here? G. G.
Bacon.
Yep. G is 7, but it's also G is 33 in K cipher, which again is Bacon in simple cipher. Here's the thing that is kind of one of the big clinchers for me. Take a look at his eye and nose. John, what letters do you see here?
His eye, is that a T?
That's a T. What letter do you see his nose?
Is it an S?
It's an S. Yeah. In reverse cipher, T is 6,
Nice.
S is 7. 67. Here in his face, we see the number 67 in cipher form. So even though obviously this looks nothing like the person, the man himself, it is a self-portrait because he tells us who he is. That's Francis.
Wow.
And in addition to that, T and S is something that I've been finding everywhere in my Baconian research, because it's also, if we use our at-batch substitution system, it's F and G. F, of course, for Francis, and G, as I just previously said, is the value of 33 in K cipher. So it's F Bacon. The brim of his hat, I, number 9, right there. He's saying I, Francis Bacon, right here.
Sure is.
So at this point, gang, what I want to point out to everyone is that the acrostic message said C hat in the message that talked about Samuel de Champlain being his best alias. So I go to the work of Samuel de Champlain and I see a hat, and sure enough, it says I, Francis Bacon. Let's keep going. Let's not stop there. This is the only known image of Champlain that is in existence. He also said C trio trees. Now, gang, I've lived in northern New York my entire life, sadly, as that may be to some of you. And I've been to the shores of Lake Champlain on multiple occasions. But in this image, I see some mistakes. And as we all know in my work, mistakes are usually clues. The mistakes I saw, those trio of trees are palm trees on the shore of Lake Champlain here in northern New York. And let me show you them. Here's the first one. That's a palm tree. It came from the left hand side. Here's the second one. There's the third one. Now, and of course, you see the arrows pointing at him and so on. There are other messages there in the leaves and so on. I'm not going to go into all of the minutiae of this and bore you even more. We're already an hour in, and we have more to go, gang. So I'm hoping you hang tough. But look at these trees. Now, some people have claimed, well, you know, he maybe he was trying to draw a willow tree. To which I say BS. And here's why. When we get into in a couple of weeks, the images on the 1612 chartographical map of Champlain, you will see he draws detailed images of the flora of New France. No mistakes. No mistakes. These are palm trees. And what number, everyone, do we see drawn into the bark? Repeated. 33.
Oh, over and over.
Over and over again. So what we have here, as you know, 33 is bacon. We have the acrostic messages, see hat, see trio trees. I go to the same image and I see the hat and I see the trio of trees and the message is the same. Bacon. I didn't stop there because some people would say, oh, there it is. All right, I get it. No, it's not enough for me. So I kept going. I went to his drawing of his house in Quebec, Habitation de Quebec. And this is what this drawing looks like. You're not going to believe what you see here once I start digging into this. But the very first thing I noticed was the misspelling. This is the only time. I haven't gone through all of, and if there are more out there, then I think that this is corroborating evidence. But I haven't found any other examples of Champlain spelling Quebec in this way. So you know what I do? What did I do, John?
Well, a mistake is not a mistake. It's an invitation to decode.
Correct. So I started calculating the values of this word. So
obviously,
Yep. So I added it up, and lo and behold, this is so much fun. Simple cipher value 67. That's Francis in simple cipher. So this spelling of Quebec in simple cipher is the exact same as the name Francis in simple cipher. So I said, well, what is it in reverse? Well, it's 108 in reverse cipher. And so that happens to be the value of Francis in reverse cipher. So I said, well, just for kicks, let's take a look at K cipher, and it's 171, which I think everyone has guessed at this point is the value of Francis in K cipher. So this label of this house drawn by Samuel de Champlain with this misspelling of Quebec, the habitation of de Quebec is actually the house of Francis. But how many times does it spell Francis, John?
What, in here? Well, there's three different ways of spelling.
Three different ways. Yeah.
Yep.
This is the house of Francis III. I don't know. I just think that's kind of cool. But this image as a whole is covered in signatures, gang. It's completely covered in Francis Bacon signatures. Let me show you how. So we do a little close up here. And if you look at the windows, what number do you see, John?
Well, zoom that in if you would.
Can't really in this image.
I can't see it.
Oh yeah, you're looking at StreamYard.
Yeah.
Anyone who's viewing, what number do you see?
I'm going to guess it's a 33. That would be my guess.
Nope.
Okay, I can't see
it. The door jamb, it's a 7 and a 7.
Oh,
okay. Here in the doors, it's 7, and then we have another 7 because the other side isn't closed in. So you see the number 77 appear in the windows and in those two doors. 77 is Rex Bacon in simple cipher. So it happens 3 times.
Wow.
So I multiplied 77 times 3 and we get 231. That's the value of Rex Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon, and Francis Stewart III, all in reverse cipher. Then here on the porch are 3 cannons. Now, one of the things that he loves to draw are cannons for, obvious reasons. First of all, it's fun to shoot guns. But the value of cannon in simple cipher is 57, which is the same as the triple tau. And there are 3 of them. So what did I do? We multiply it times 3. It's 171. And that is the value of Francis in K cipher. Now, I'm going to go back, John. Q has a value of 16 in symbol cipher. R has
Mhm.
a value of 17. What are they added together?
It's 33.
33. We have this 4 right here, gang, is actually supposed to be the letter A, but he recorded it as 4 because as you go across here and you start adding up all of these letters and their values, every single one of them are signatures. For example, 33 plus 4 is 37. That's the value of Fran, Fran, his abbreviation of his first name in symbol cipher. If we have QR again, 66 plus 4, well, that's 70. That's Dauphin. And then we have
Interesting.
33. We add 33
Francis
to,
Bacon.
yep, we add 33 to our 70, 103. Shakespeare.
Wow.
In symbol cipher. Gang, I could do this all night long with all of these letters in these different sections of how they line up. This is all in my book in these little areas. And then I add them all also together and they produce more values. Fourfold cipher produces even more values.
Wow.
So
So if
I'm
anything's
I'm just giving people the
it's just
highlight.
crazy. Jake, if anything's destroyed along the way, any of the source material, something like this would survive. It's so redundant. You know what I'm saying? You can see it over and over. And so now maybe with someone that's, because not a lot of people could read back then, less learned, they could say if they were taught the basics in the club of how to read this, they could go here and you don't even have to be literate to read that and know the esoteric or know the truth.
That's exactly it, John. And you don't have to go through the way I did and check every single cipher system. I mean, if they understood simple cipher, they could look at it and say, oh wow, that's Francis.
But you wouldn't have to even be literate. I mean, if you could run numbers, and you just knew the equivalent, like this R as a symbol, not as a something that produces a symbol for a sound, but a symbol for a number, you could easily run numbers and come up with the same values as you were if you're actually decoding it in something that Shakespeare wrote, or something that Bacon wrote, or something that Walter Raleigh wrote.
Exactly.
It's just a quicker way of doing it. And if you knew what you were looking at, it would just pop, and that's what it's doing. It's just popping.
And so when all of Court, I'm going to put his up real quick. You got it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Court, you're a step ahead of me as usual, but I've already looked at it, and you don't even want to know. We don't have enough hours in the day. You're so right, man. You're so right as usual. All right, I'm gonna keep going, gang. I know I'm dragging this on, but I'm on a roll here. So, and again, Canon's 171. So here are the acrostics that appeared in that particular arrangement: C hat, C trio, trees, substitution of R for H because that's the at-bash substitution for it. So the big thing I want to stress to people is that with two completely different transpositions, rearranging those letters using the number 38, then rearranging those letters using 5, along with a rearrangement of key 32, we have this same messages. Champlain is our rosy map maker here, and he was Sir Francis Bacon's, as crazy as it sounds, best alias. The images I checked also confirm those messages. He tells us to see hat. He tells us to see the trees, see pictures of his ship boats, and we see his name repeated from these people who are supposed to be different people, but were actually him recording his name in those images. So the evidence is there.
What's genius about this is, as you and I have talked about number saturation, and you have to do this, and produce this, and you run it through this algorithm, but it's also right there pictorially. And that doesn't need an interpretation, either 33, 55, whatever the value is. It's just right there.
It's there.
like
And
hidden
again,
features when you were a
John,
kid.
it's right there.
Yeah.
It's
It's
55,
right
it's
there.
33, it's the letter G, it's TS. I mean, we you can see it. And once you
And
see it,
it's
you're like, "Holy
this is
crap,
not
it's
the
there."
yeah, this is not the only place we've seen such things. We've done other analysis of other images, and it's also hidden, like the 33 in the web that we saw on the frontispiece that one time,
Yeah.
and so it's a redundancy. Like, again, you can do this in a very complex way for people that want to take that challenge, and again, it was
Mhm.
something I think for amusement for the club members as well. Or, again, if you just are looking at it in a very basic way, you're getting a separate confirmation, a third confirmation, a fourth confirmation, each coded in their own niches. This is what's brilliant about it.
It
Completely
is.
brilliant.
It doesn't end. And so, I haven't
Wow.
even gotten to the good stuff yet.
Well, have to be a part two. We got a bunch of questions too, Jake.
Well, oh, great. Tell you what, let me I'm gonna give you a little smattering of some of the evidence on the 1612 chart. And that's this image right here, gang. I
Okay.
can't zoom in on it, with this, rendition of it, but like I said, this is available on the ghostsofbacon.com on the under resources tab.
Wow.
You can pull it up yourself and look at the level of detail. Okay, this is the fauna, or excuse me, flora I was talking about earlier, and the level of detail that he drew it. And anyone who says that those were supposed to be willow trees, well, they can look at these images and they realize that they're full of it. So this map right here that we're looking at contains so many Baconian ciphers. I had to break this into 2 different presentations, and I'm already an hour and almost 15 in, an hour and 15 in on
Hmm.
this show. And usually I try to keep it under an hour. So I'm going to just go very quickly, and I'm going to show you a couple of the highlights here going into what I'm going to show you next time. Everyone, this navigational chart right here has a cipher encrypted within it that when you decrypt it and decode it, it leads you directly to Oak Island, Nova Scotia. I'm going to let that sit there for a second and let people kind of chew on it.
What?
But that is the purpose of this navigational chart. This map leads directly to Oak Island, Nova Scotia. So, one of the things that Champlain was known to do is really draw some detailed, accurate maps of coastlines. And this is kind of a discussion I got into with Doug Crowell regarding this map. And because he contended that, and to Doug's credit and in his defense, map makers throughout history have seen this label that, see where my cursor is right there, John?
Hmm.
There's a label there that you can't read because it's so small, but it's basically the French name of the Bay of Many Isles.
Hmm.
Now, McQuiston and others have written how that was the original name of Mahone Bay,
Yep.
and yet it's farther east here on the coast of Nova Scotia. And Doug pointed out to me, he said, "Well, it's labeled." I said, I think that's a part of the cipher. And I've been able to definitively prove that it's a part of the cipher, and it's not
Hmm.
labeling the coastline there. The Bay of Many Isles is Mahone Bay, gang. And so the reason I know this is that the letters and the numbers down in the legend at the bottom of this map actually label the places that are on the map. The words, they all serve a different purpose, which is a part of his cipher that I've decrypted. So, for example, the letter O labels Port du Rossignol on the southern coast, which is actually modern day Liverpool, Nova Scotia. The Isle of the Sea Lions is not a place marker. It's not the name of an island in that area. It's actually a part of the cipher. So I'm going to show you how Champlain is the rosy map maker, but in terms of it's actually Francis Bacon. First of all, across this map, there are 10 sea creatures that are drawn in detail, as you can see here, and labeled. I'm only giving you 3 right here. Now, this map is illustrated in this way for a very specific purpose. These labels actually have messages contained within them, because many of them, as you all know, are misspelled. And as soon as I see something that's misspelled, it kind of raises my awareness that there are clues here that need to be closely looked at. So I had to check the reason why many of these were misspelled. It turns out they were anagrams, and they utilize the at-bash substitution system. And these examples here are representative of what I'm going to explain to you and show you how this works. So if we use the substitutions, if we look at the label that is in French sea dog, chien de mer, if we substitute an X for the C, an R for the H, and M for N, because those are the rules of the substitution system according to the at-bash system, it spells I'm Rex de mer. I'm king of the sea. After Drake died, it seems that Bacon took over as being king of the seven seas. And here you can see the substitution. I here substituting M for N. It drops down here. R for the H here. C for the X here. I'm Rex of the sea. Sturgeon with this really interesting spelling. If we look at this and we actually substitute E for the V, X for C, F for T, and S for G, a message that actually appears in other areas, in other sources, Rex F, son. He was the son of Francis, King Francis. And here you can see how that works. Once again, C for X, T for F, and then we have the U or V for E, and son, G for S. Gros Chavos. This is one of my favorites. I just like the look on his face. He looks very surprised. If we substitute a Y for the B here, and an R for the H, and an S for the G, it spells a rosy cross. And so the fact that these even exist, and by the way, I was able to do this for every single label on this map, except for one. There was one I just couldn't figure it out. I didn't understand the context. So this one is going to be very important in the next show, and so I want people to really take note of this. This is a misspelling of the French word for cod, which is supposed to be morue, but it's spelled with an L. If we substitute a E for the V here, or U, it spells me Leo, or I'm a lion. This is going to be very important later because there were a very small group of Dutch privateers who referred to themselves as the Lions of the Sea. And I respectfully suggest to everyone that these people were actually none other than Francis Bacon and Walter Raleigh. And I know for a fact, I was talking with Bill Smith, who was on the Curse of Oak Island here in this last season. And, we were chatting the other day. And he said it also on Jeff's podcast that when James I made privateering against the Spanish illegal, many of the British privateers became Dutch privateers and started sailing on Dutch ships. I'm pretty sure that Walter Raleigh was one of them, 100%. So it's also the Scottish standard of James VI and the House Stuart and James I of England. And there it is there. And of course, that means that it was also the standard of Francis Bacon. So I'm going to leave it there. And we'll pick that up in terms of how this map leads to Oak Island. I'm going to be covering that here in a couple of weeks. And look at Tom Burns' comment. Yeah, gross Chavos. He looks surprised because he just found out.
That's classic.
It is classic Tom. Thank you. You know, it's funny because I, I'm pretty sure I had that look on my face when I decrypted that message, because it's outrageous. Um, the claims that come out of these ciphertext gang is they're just pretty much off the hook. Um, and so, like I said, you know, this was one that because I had the corroborating evidence, I made sure I included it in the Holy Trinity decryption, my first book. It's obviously a central tenet to my second book. Um, let's see. Wonder if Bacon being denied his right made him realize that a monarchy wasn't necessary, and so he set out to create a government based on the people instead of royalty.
Was he
Jenny,
really denied his right, or did he make the choice to not ascend to one of the thrones?
essentially, he was denied his right. Yes, 100%.
Okay.
She's right. However, I think that it was always an option, um,
I would
because
say.
the way it was phrased, the way he wrote it in the ciphertext, he states um, that he was the heir to the throne of two nations,
Correct.
and then he
France
said,
and England.
"Yeah, France and England," and so he says, "I choose to pass on holiday."
Hmm.
So, you know, in that sense, yeah, he chose not to take it, but I think there was another heir um, that he wanted to see on the throne. And one of the cipher messages states explicitly, "I love seeing my brother on the throne of England, James." And so, um, yeah, I think that you know, the whole idea. And gang, here's the thing. I'm not saying that. Well, actually, yeah, I am. The cipher evidence is explicit, and it can't be denied. It's out there now. Now, in just this one episode, this one show, I've only given you a fraction of the information I have. I've given you a fraction of what I know. Um, yeah, but I hope that it was enough corroborating evidence uh, for everyone to say there could be something to this, that where Bacon says that he used the alias of Samuel de Champlain of all things. Um, is that even possible? Well, after looking at all of this evidence, you pretty much have to consider that, wow, there's a lot here. Um, and I've only shown you a fraction of it. When we get into the actual map and the specifics of it in a couple of weeks, uh, I'm going to be able to show you. Most people who will look at this rationally will say it was true. So, hey, Chris, my fellow English teacher, how you been, my friend? Um, I haven't been on too much recently, so you may have covered this, and maybe you'll cover this tonight. But I need to ask because my high school English teacher would be mad. Okay, Chris, smart ass. I was Chris's high school English teacher. Okay, so how would these people you're talking about be able to accomplish so much in their lifetimes? The body of work credited to Shakespeare is immense and enough for a lifetime, but now crediting it to Bacon along with all of these other aliases is just a mind-boggling amount of sheer work to accomplish. Chris, thank you so much for that question, because it's one I get asked all the time. And it's because the reason I'm asked that question all the time is that it's an excellent question. We need to remember as moderns that Francis Bacon didn't have a job where he had to go punch a time clock. We need to remember that most of these nobles in that time and place did not have that lifestyle that we have. Okay, they also didn't have all of the distractions that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't sit on their asses watching Sunday football like we do. They were writing plays. Um, and when you consider that while he was at sea, how did he spend the majority of his days? Let's think about this. He has to go out, he has to make some calculations, time the meridian, and report to his captain. And then he goes back to his cabin and writes a play. Now, um, any of and Court, I know that you're watching. You know how long it takes to write a book. I know how long it takes to write a book. And people ask me how I managed to do it while having a full-time job. I was getting up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning and writing until 7 every day.
Yep.
And in that amount of time, in less than a year, I wrote the first draft of my first book, and it was over 370 pages.
Wow.
Okay. So you can do that just carving out a small section of your day. Anyone can do that. Now, imagine someone with his intelligence and his background and his education having, I don't know, I'm going to spend a few years at sea. I wonder what he might be able to accomplish. And so to answer that's the quick question, Chris. But we have to change the way we think of what they did for work, because especially the noblemen, they did not have 9-to-5 jobs. Even the people that were members of parliament, like Bacon was later in life, they didn't have to go to work every day. So that's how he did it. That's how he did it. Such a great question. Let's see. Thanks, Tom. Canadian history tells us Champlain was active in the Maritimes and Quebec in the early 1600s and spent 3 winters in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and at least 1 winter later in Quebec. If Champlain was Bacon, does Bacon go missing from history books in Europe during those times? Short answer, yes. There were times when people actually showed up at his house, Tom, to visit with him. One of them was a marquis from France, when they were trying to negotiate a marriage, and he wanted to visit Bacon, and Bacon had to receive him behind a curtain because he was ill. Okay. And the Marquis commented that Bacon was like the angels. So many people had heard of the angels, but no one had ever seen them. A lot of people hadn't seen Bacon. And so this is how he ended up getting the reputation for being sickly, was because I think that while he was away, that his operatives back home were posing as himself behind the curtain. He was the man, the original man behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. So yeah, great question.
And just one more, and then we'll close
the
time here.
Court, it is clear a lot of these folks that are part of the underground stream used aliases 100%. For example, each member of the Academy of Arcadia was given an alternate name under which they could publish if they wished. There it is right there, Court.
There it is right there.
Well, here's the thing, gang. Suppose we give Bacon the name Champlain. We give him the name Tiberio Tonelli. We give him the name Battista Boazio. And who's to say that he doesn't have a stack of passports like what a modern spy would have? And he's actually those people all at the same time, simultaneously. Who's to say that when all of a sudden he publishes a letter under a different name where he describes in detail the beheading of, say, Walter Raleigh, and embellishing certain details. Again, it's entirely possible for one person to do every single one of those things, every single one. And, and like I said, and I think my former star student, Chris Chambers, asked the question earlier this evening regarding, how does one person do all of that? Well, they don't waste their time. I mean, if nothing else, everyone, we can learn so much from Sir Francis Bacon, not just in terms of what he has to teach us about the scientific method and what he has to teach us, through his cipher systems and how he can hone our thinking and reasoning skills. we have a lot to learn from him based upon his life and what he was able to accomplish in it. And so the big thing here is it not only is it possible because the ciphers explicitly state it, then I have to follow those clues where they lead me. And they keep continually confirming that the ciphertexts are correct.
Absolutely.
100%. So such great questions, gang. And our friend Stephanie's on. Hiding from the Renaissance fact checkers and medieval Twitter.
Absolutely.
70-year lady after my own heart. I swear. That is
good.
just so perfect. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. What a great show, Jeff. Jake, fantastic show tonight.
Thanks, man. And I couldn't have done it without you.
Too good.
And so listen, gang, in 2 weeks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up where we left off. I'm going to show you step by step how, and by the way, you don't need to be an expert in Bacon cipher systems to understand this. You don't need to be able to calculate. Thanks, Jonna. You don't have to be able to do this stuff in your head, because all of the thanks, Chris. All of the cipher signatures in use on Champlain's map are Francis and Bacon. That's really it. Thanks, Sharon. All right, guys. Thanks so much, gang. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us for so long. This was a marathon session tonight. And John, my friend, as always, I couldn't have done it without you. I appreciate you very much.
It was awesome.
Riding shotgun. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I always love sharing my information with you, especially. So, all right, people, let's do this in a couple more weeks. And I'm going to take you from Bacon and Champlain's starting point, and I'm going to show you how he leads directly to Oak Island. This is a crazy story, people. You're going to love it.
I can't wait.
You're going to love it. So thanks, gang. And signing off. And let me figure out how to do this correctly. Thanks a bunch, John. Thanks, everyone.